Gerwig has made a career out of telling love stories about non-romantic love. There are traditional romances in her movies, but romantic love is never the character's primary need. Gerwig's heroines find happiness and emotional fulfillment elsewhere. I don't know how to feel, but I wanna try.
If you're tired, we can sit down.
I'm not tired.
You were dragging your feet.
You are so infuriating.
Please stop yelling.
I'm not yelling. Oh, it's perfect.
Do you love it?
With her first movie as a solo director, Lady Bird, Gerwig set out to create a female alternative to male-centric coming-of-age films like Boyhood, The Graduate, and The 400 Blows. Saoirse Ronan gives an unforgettable, uncannily naturalistic performance as Christine Lady Bird McPherson, an individualistic teenager who gives herself the titular moniker as she navigates her final year of high school and tries to figure out who she is. The movie covers all aspects of Lady Bird's adolescent experience. Her early boyfriends, her sibling rivalry with her older brother, her attempts to get into college, abandoning her lifelong best friend to hang out with the popular kids, etc. But the heart of the movie is her relationship with her mother, Marion, played spectacularly by Laurie Metcalf.
I want to go where culture is, like
How
New
in the
York,
world did I raise such a
or at least
snob?
Connecticut or New Hampshire, where writers live in the
Get into
woods.
those schools anyway.
Mom!
More than earning their Oscar nominations, Metcalf and Ronan shared delightfully authentic on-screen chemistry as a mother and her teenage daughter in the midst of the difficult rebellious phase. The arc of their relationship is universally identifiable, capturing both their similarities and differences, summed up perfectly in the opening shot of the two mirrored opposite each other in bed. They're complete polar opposites, but they're also in many ways exactly the same. Lady Bird constantly rebels against her mother, and most of their conversations escalate into screaming matches. But whenever she gets hurt in a relationship or a friendship, her mom is the first person she wants to talk to. In most teen movies, from Clueless to 10 Things I Hate About You to the many classics of John Hughes, the female lead has to choose the right guy. But in Lady Bird, there is no right guy. Christine has two major love interests, Danny, played by Lucas Hedges, and Kyle, played by Timothée Chalamet, and they're both wrong for her. The former is a really sweet guy, but he's struggling with his sexuality, and the latter is a pretentious douchebag.
Shut up! Shut up! Different things can be sad, it's not all war.
Lady Bird doesn't peddle Hollywood's problematic message that girls need a boyfriend who will make them happy. It's a story about self-discovery.
I love you. Thank you. Thank you.
I can make a life for us.
Joe.
And you should be an actress and you should have a life on the stage. Let's just run away together.
I want to get married.
Why?
Because I love him.
You will be bored of him in 2 years, and we will be interesting forever.
Gerwig's second solo directorial effort, Little Women, carries the same message. After the success of Lady Bird, Gerwig was offered the chance to write and direct a new adaptation of Louisa May Alcott's classic novel. This was Gerwig's first adaptation of existing source material, but the simple, straightforward tone of Alcott's writing paired nicely with Gerwig's own uniquely true-to-life storytelling style. Jo March, again played by Ronan, who again received a much-deserved Oscar nomination, has a couple of suitors to choose between, but she's more interested in finishing her novel than finding a husband. Little Women is a meta-exploration of romance narratives, as Jo's publisher insists on a sweeping, romantic ending to her story in which the protagonist ends up with the man of her dreams. And then the movie itself tags on a similarly sweeping, romantic ending. Society wants Jo to find a man, but the story is really about the love between a writer and the written word. Little Women still acknowledges the positive role of romantic love. Jo has a poignant monologue where she explains that she's sick of people saying that love is all a woman is fit for, but she's also really lonely.
I'm so sick of people saying that love is just all a woman is fit for. I'm so sick of it. But I'm so lonely.
Companionship is certainly comforting, but it's not the only thing people need. The real emotional catharsis at the end of the movie is a budding young author watching the printing of her debut novel and getting to hold a physical copy of it in her hands. The man she ends up with is just lucky she invited him along for the ride.
Little Women?
Yeah.
I cannot stand those March sisters. Boy, do they get on my nerves.
What about them gets on your nerves?
They're giggling all the time, making jam.
I feel like you're misreading it.
I find them a little mawkish and twee.
You're so beautiful. I know it.
Gerwig's latest effort, Barbie, continues her trend of exploring unconventional forms of love. Barbie isn't a story about loving another person, it's a story about self-love and self-acceptance. The film goes to great pains to avoid the predictable Barbie ends up with Ken ending. The CEO of Mattel wants Barbie to end up with Ken, but Sasha refuses to let Barbie's story end that way.
Hey, what about Barbie?
What do you mean?
What's her ending? What does she get?
Well, that's easy. She's in love with Ken.
That is not her ending.
Barbie has all the familiar insecurities we can all relate to. Anxiety about death, the fear that she's not good enough, the terrors of cellulite, and she overcomes those insecurities and embraces the relentless messiness of human existence. The great Billie Eilish song What Was I Made For captures those themes beautifully. In one of the most touching scenes in the movie, a scene that Gerwig had to fight the studio not to cut, Barbie sits on a bench, observes the people around her, and realizes that being human isn't as straightforward as being Barbie. Humans are imperfect. We bicker and fight and make mistakes and hold grudges. Barbie is about to give up on her quest of self-exploration, but then she looks across the bench at an old lady and tells her she's beautiful, and the old lady quips back that she knows how beautiful she is, and this reminds Barbie of the unbridled self-confidence of her friends back in Barbie Land, and inspires her not to give up. Anyone who has trouble loving themselves or accepting their own foibles could learn a lot from Barbie's journey. Gerwig's exploration of non-romantic love goes back to the movie that made her a star. A few years after pioneering the mumblecore movement alongside Joe Swanberg and Lynn Shelton and the Duplass brothers and many others, Gerwig teamed up with Noah Baumbach to co-write Frances Ha. Essentially, Frances Ha is a breakup movie about a friendship. The saga of Frances Halladay and her platonic life partner Sophie is a timely reminder that romantic partners come and go, but your friends are the ones you make lasting, truly meaningful connections with. This is a running thread throughout Gerwig's work. Lady Bird ditches her douchey date to go to prom with her estranged best friend Julie, surrounded by teenage couples that won't last, and they have the time of their lives. It can also be seen in Little Women, with friendship swapped out for sisterhood, and in Barbie's tight-knit camaraderie with all the other Barbies.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie. Hi, Barbie. Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie!
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie!
Hi, Ken.
Hi, Barbie.
Tell me the story of us.
Again? All right, Frances. We are going to take over the world.
You'll be this awesomely bitchy publishing mogul.
And we'll co-own a vacation apartment in Paris.
And we'll speak at college graduations.
And honorary degrees.
So many honorary degrees.
Frances and Sophie share the ideal friendship. There's no better friend for Frances than Sophie, and there's no better friend for Sophie than Frances. They have the same interests, they have the same sense of humor, and they never get tired of spending time together. They connect on every level. Frances frequently tells people we're the same person with different hair. She tells Sophie we're like a lesbian couple that doesn't have sex anymore. But that perfect dynamic is disrupted when Sophie moves out of their Brooklyn apartment to live with someone else in Tribeca. Suddenly, Frances's life is thrown into a spiral.
Ow! Fuck! We bought the kettle together, remember? At the Mexican superstore? Jesus! Bring it back! Or buy me another kettle!
And matters only get worse when Sophie gets engaged to her boyfriend Patch, who Frances doesn't really like that much. Not only does Frances not live with her best friend anymore, she hardly ever gets to see her. And when she does see Sophie, she only has a couple of hours free before she has to go to something else, and she usually has Patchy in tow. The pain of losing a close friend to a romantic relationship is relatable to just about everybody. Frances sums up the most tragic conundrum of such a scenario perfectly.
It's just if something funny happens on the way to the deli, you'll only tell one person, and that'll be Patch, and I'll never hear about it.
After being ousted from the idyllic apartment she shares with Sophie, Frances bounces from address to address around New York City, and on the outskirts of the city, and back home in Sacramento, and eventually back in the city. Each address gets its own title card, breaking the movie up into chapters. Throughout the film, Frances tries out a few replacement friends, some great, some terrible, but it never matches up to her perfect dynamic with Sophie. Lev and Benji are a lot of fun, and Frances feels like she's starring in a sitcom called My Two Husbands when she lives with them, but they lack Sophie's emotional sensitivity. Rachel is a dancer just like Frances, but she lacks the weird sense of humor that Frances shares with Sophie. Frances's attempt to play fight with Rachel the same way she used to play fight with Sophie is a classic cringe comedy gag. In the opening scene, Frances and Sophie's play fights in the park look like the most fun, but Rachel just doesn't get the bit at all. As far as she can tell, a woman she barely knows has just attacked her. Point is, despite Frances's tireless efforts to find a new best friend, it's never quite the same as it was with Sophie.
I wouldn't eat a domesticated dog. You say that just because they're cute.
When they live together at the beginning of the film, Frances and Sophie regularly recount the story of Us, a glamorous, idealized fantasy of their future together. According to the story of Us, Frances will be this famous modern dancer, and Sophie will be this awesomely bitchy publishing mogul. They'll co-own a vacation apartment in Paris, they'll have lovers and no children, and they'll speak at college graduations, and they'll amass so many honorary degrees. But as soon as Sophie gets a serious boyfriend, that dream is dead. This heartbreaking through line points to the futility of planning for the future. It doesn't matter what you want the future to bring, life has no interest in those plans.
Yeah, aren't you a lot older than Sophie?
No, we went to college together.
You seem older.
I'm a couple months older.
Like, a lot older. But less, like, grown up. It's weird. You have an older face.
But, like, you don't have your shit together?
Although it's told through the lens of her friendship with Sophie, Frances Ha is more broadly defined as a character study of a 27-year-old ballerina struggling to navigate adult life. Star power is usually determined by confidence. Audiences fawn over George Clooney and Angelina Jolie and Charles Bronson because they're very self-assured. But what makes Gerwig a star is the opposite, authentic awkwardness. Frances is painfully relatable. She's aimless, she's always exhausted, she's eternally lonely, and above all, she's very, very awkward. She's labelled undateable by her roommate Benji, who's clearly infatuated with her and attempting a negging strategy. Frances is an avatar for every 20-something who doesn't know how to turn their dreams into a reality. She deals with all the stresses and insecurities and shortcomings that all young people face. When her card is rejected at a restaurant, she tells her date,
I'm so embarrassed, I'm not a real person yet.
Before Barbie told a literal story about becoming a real person, Frances Ha tackled that story from a more metaphorical standpoint.
I want to love him if you love him, but you don't love him.
I do.
Sophie, I fucking held your head while you cried. I bought special milk for you. I know where you hide your pills. Don't treat me like a 3-hour brunch friend.
Right, I'm not talking to you while you're like this.
Frances Ha feels improvised. Its dialogue is as spontaneous and lifelike as any ad-libbed mumblecore movie, but every scene is meticulously scripted. The dialogue is written out to the letter, but it has the feel and flow of a real conversation. When Frances puts on a dance show and Benji compliments her artistry, Gerwig sums up her own creative process.
I like things that look like mistakes.
The conversations between Frances and her friends aren't polished, they're true to life. In most comedies, the movie is in on the character's jokes, but sometimes in Frances Ha, the joke is that the character's joke didn't land. When Frances buys dinner for her mutual friend Lev, played brilliantly by an early career Adam Driver, he makes a joke that she doesn't get, and that makes the whole situation even funnier.
Just because you bought dinner doesn't mean I'm gonna sleep with you.
I'm not trying to sleep with you.
No, I was pretending to be a liberated woman.
Oh, I got it.
Cinematographer Sam Levy shot Frances Ha in crisp black and white. This wasn't an ostentatious, artsy-fartsy move to lend the movie some prestige. The film's visual style is wonderfully minimalist. The black and white palette puts a spotlight on human interaction and the agonizing mundanity of everyday life, while also bringing out the beauty and romance in those mundane everyday situations. In what is arguably Frances Ha's most iconic moment, David Bowie's Modern Love plays over an ecstatic Frances dancing through the streets of New York after landing a discounted bedroom in a hip Chinatown apartment. This heartwarming image is the perfect visual representation of fleeting joy. Frances has fallen into a great new life that isn't sustainable. The inevitable months of lonely, strapped-for-cash misery that await Frances are like a ticking time bomb. Modern love comes back at the end of the movie when Frances achieves a more lasting happiness and gains some self-acceptance. Frances Ha was edited by Jennifer Lame in her first of many collaborations with Baumbach. In the years that followed, she would chronicle dysfunctional family dynamics in the Meyerowitz stories, and balance two sides of a divorce in Marriage Story. It's easy to see why Lame became Baumbach's go-to editor after Frances Ha. Editing can make or break a loose, vignette-driven movie like this, and Lame manages to accurately reflect the fleeting passage of everyday life in Frances Ha's briskly paced montages. The movie races through its vignettes with tiny glimpses into people's lives. After Frances's card is rejected, she runs around town in search of an ATM, or as we say in Britain, a cash machine, and trips on the sidewalk, or as we say in Britain, the pavement. And then she returns to the dinner table with a blood-soaked arm.
What the fuck? You're bleeding.
What? Oh, I can't find it.
Well, somewhere on your arm.
Oh shit, sorry.
Well, don't apologize to me.
The movie is full of this kind of spur-of-the-moment human contact. At a nice lean 86 minutes, Frances Ha is sparingly edited with French New Wave style jump cuts. Lame's razor-sharp jump cutting gives audiences the feeling of spending several hours at a party in just about 30 seconds of screen time. An entire holiday season in Sacramento, reconnecting with friends and family, going to church, revisiting hometown hotspots, is covered in just under 4 minutes. The story is told in what isn't shown. Lame doesn't show the uncomfortable conversation in which Lev and Benji have to ask Frances to leave their apartment because she can't afford her share of the rent. She just cuts to Frances taking her stuff to a storage locker and flying home to stay with her parents over Christmas. The audience knows the characters well enough from their ordinary day-to-day interactions to imagine how that excruciating conversation went. When I showed Frances Ha to my sister, she enjoyed it, but her initial review was just 6 words long. I just felt sorry for her. As the movie goes on, Frances is really put through the ringer. Alone, broke, kicked out of every apartment on the market. She stops moving forward in life and even starts going backwards. After financially ruining herself to spend a couple of humdrum days in Paris, Frances returns to her university as an RA for some room and board.
It wasn't that long ago that I went here. I'm only 27.
The structure of Frances Ha's quarter-life crisis storyline is strangely life-affirming. Frances's life falls apart for an hour, then she pulls it back together in the last 20 minutes. In that final 20-minute stretch, Frances Ha ends on an optimistic note, telling audiences that, like Frances, they're ultimately responsible for their own happiness. After hitting rock bottom, Frances throws herself into her work to pull herself out of it. A lot of us creative types can relate to that. Sometimes a trivial creative project like a dance show or a YouTube channel full of film reviews has to substitute for real happiness. Frances stops waiting for her dreams to come true and starts making them a reality. Encouraged by the head of her old dance company, she puts on her own show and invites everyone from the movie to the opening night. At a dinner party around the midpoint of the movie, Frances describes a moment she wants to experience, making eye contact with a romantic or non-romantic partner across a crowded room and sharing a sentiment without saying any words. Before admitting that she sounds stoned,
I sound stoned. I'm not stoned.
Frances embellishes the details of this very specific fantasy.
That's what I want out of a relationship. Or just life, I guess.
In a heartwarming scene towards the end of the movie, she has that moment with Sophie. After her dance show, when Frances is mingling with her guests and receiving compliments from her former boss, she glances across the room at a now married Sophie and they catch each other's eye and share an unspoken connection. This beautiful climactic shot-reverse shot solidifies Frances Ha as a love story about the bond between two non-romantic soulmates, and the springboard for Gerwig's entire career as a filmmaker and storyteller.
It's that thing when you're with someone and you love them and they know it and they love you and you know it, but it's a party and you're both talking to other people and you're laughing and shining and you look across the room and catch each other's eyes, but not because you're possessive or it's precisely sexual, but because that is your person in this life.
I Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.